Day, and she has said that she doesn't think he can be capable of the murders that he's accused of committing. Criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joshua Ritter is with us now. He's the host of the True Crime Daily Sidebar Podcast. Welcome back, as always, Josh. Nice to see you. Let's talk about this hearing, a discovery hearing. What do we anticipate we may learn this morning in court?
They're going to reveal more of the evidence that they have against him. After he was arrested and the initial threat of him causing further violence was kind of addressed, now they're able to kind of go through the evidence that they have, further develop that. I imagine this will probably be related to more DNA evidence. They've been able to do more testing. There's a tremendous amount of DNA evidence, other forensic evidence, and digital evidence with all the tracking that they were doing with his phone. So they're just going to continue to hand that over to the defense in different tranches. And I imagine that's what they're going to be discussing this morning. And
how does a hearing like this impact the overall timeline in this case?
It will probably delay things further. I mean, when you are talking about, gigabytes worth of information being turned over to the defense and a case of this magnitude and seriousness, the defense is probably going to have a lot of leeway with the judge to ask for more time, which I imagine they will.
You bring up the DNA. I would imagine that's going to be critical to this case. What is the most compelling DNA evidence we have heard publicly so far?
They were able to take DNA from the victim. I mean, it's, just directly connecting the dots of DNA recovered from the victims, some of the DNA that was recovered from the bindings that were used on the victims, that was been able to be traced back to both his household and to him directly now, we're finding out. So, in a case like this, the defense is still going to point out the fact that this is circumstantial. There's no eyewitnesses. But when you have DNA making that kind of a direct link, it becomes a very powerful case for the prosecution.
Yeah, hard to argue. But there's also some very curious circumstantial evidence. What stands out to you about his activities in the months and years leading to these murders?
The police did an incredible job of not just tracking his activities, but also being able to show that he could not have been in other locations while these crimes were taking place. In other words, they were already addressing what could have possibly been some sort of alibi defense made by his attorneys in this case. And the affidavit that was provided when we first learned of his arrest really shows a tremendous amount of detailed work that they were able to do in not only pointing out where he was, but where he also wasn't during some of these crimes.
You've got 4 murder charges here, the 4 victims, Maureen, Melissa, Megan, and Amber, but then you have some other potential murders that could be linked in this case. Does that bolster the prosecution's case to have multiple victims, or does it make it more complicated once this goes to trial for a jury?
I think they're going to be very selective if they decide, if at all, to add other victims to this case. The last thing they want to do is add a victim that is not as strongly tied to him, and that somehow becomes an opportunity for the defense to exploit. There have been other possible victims that they tried to link to him, but the MO, the modus operandi, doesn't seem to fit what these 4 victims do. So I think a smart strategy, I mean, you're talking about already a significant amount of exposure for prison for him with these 4 murder victims. So I think they stick to whatever's strongest and don't dilute their case by something that might be not as convincing.
Joshua, what do you make of the wife in this case? She divorced him almost immediately after the charges were filed, but she has continued to visit him in jail and has more recently told the public through her attorneys that she doesn't believe that he's capable of what he's accused of. She is also expected to be in court today.
Yeah, it's a tough position for her to be in. I sympathize with what she is possibly going through, her life being turned upside down as well. It's not surprising that she would offer some sort of words, to say that she doesn't believe from the person that she knew could commit these types of crimes, because otherwise, the people are wondering what could you have possibly been doing living with a person who is able to commit these types of horrendous acts. So it's difficult for her, and I sympathize.
Yeah, she has said she'll wait, as we all will, for all of the evidence to come out before making a final judgment. A strong case, though, it sounds like, from the prosecution. We will be following that. We've got a reporter inside the courtroom today. Joshua Ritter, as always, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Attorneys for the suspect